Welcome to the FatCat Moto Park in Doncaster for round 2 of the 2017 Minibike British Championship. The opening round of the season saw the top 5 in the pro point standings separated by just 5 points over 3 races. Before we join them for the second set of 3 motos, let's take a look at how riders in the other classes got on at round 2. In the kids 50cc class, Harry Lee maintained his unbeaten 2017 run by capturing each of the 3 motos at round 2. Dayton Thompson was again his closest rival, but he was easily beaten in the first 2 races, and despite a closer effort in the third, still dropped to an 18-point championship deficit overall. The first moto was characterised by an excellent battle between Callum Hart and Ben Johnston over third, Hart making his first appearance of the season and denying Johnston a spot on the podium after his round 1 third-place exploits. Harry Lee, meanwhile, was over 7 seconds a lap faster in the first and second motos and dominated the third by almost 2 minutes to maintain his maximum points haul. With 6 second places to his name, Dayton Thompson sits directly behind Harry Lee and 18 points in arrears. The inclusion of Callum Hart spiced up the second round of the season, and his podium performances created a gap in the overall standings behind the top 2. Harry Lee sits in front with 150 points, Dayton Thompson behind on 132, Ben Johnston still third, but now 18 points further in arrears than Thompson. Senna Ace Summers won all 3 motos in the Youth 125cc class at round 2 and was only really challenged in the third race of the day. Top position settled down in the early stages of the first race once Louis Dutton passed Freddie Hills for third, and from there the closest battle was between Jack Perry and James Speller over 5th position. Perry took the 5th place, which was enough for third in the 9 to 11 age group behind Freddie Hills and the dominant Senna Ace Summers. Second in the scratch race was Ewan Goddard, who topped the 12 to 14 standings in the first 2 motos to level the overall scoring in the older age group. In the 9 to 11 Youth Championship, Senna Ace Summers remains unbeaten, and his efforts have been such that he is also regularly outperforming riders more than 3 years older than him. 3 victories at round 2, and he remains unbeaten in his own age group. The only change to the podium trio at round 2 sees Freddie Hills get the better of Leo Vols and now sit just 2 points behind him in the standings overall. Meanwhile, in the 12 to 14 age group, Louis Dutton and Ewan Goddard have each taken 3 race victories in the first 6 races of 2017. Goddard coming out on top at the second round to bring himself level in the overall standings. After just 2 completed rounds, Dutton and Goddard on 141 points apiece look comfortable favourites, 32 clear of Leo Stokes and his battle with Alex Cook over third. After a 3rd position finish at the opening round, Craig Rose moved top of the 110cc class in another highly competitive day of racing, in which the lead duo was separated by less than 2 seconds in each of the 3 motos. Piers Skinner had topped qualifying by over half a second, but never led a race, and completed the opening day second in the standings with a trio of top 3 finishes. It was Elliot Gardner, after missing out on the podium at round 1, who was Rose's closest pursuer in the first moto, eventually finishing less than a second behind, matching him throughout. But Gardner dropped back in the points with a disastrous second outing that saw him relegated to the back of the pack in the early stages before recovering to 12th. His consolation was a start-to-finish victory in the 3rd moto, with Piers Skinner putting in an excellent ride to recover 2nd after sitting down in 5th in the early stages. Skinner was faster than Gardner on every lap but the last, Skinner though maintaining his gap and extending it on the final lap for the 25 championship points. Round 1 winner Jack Titterell was surprisingly anonymous at round 2, but although 4th place on the day dropped him out of the championship lead, he remains 2nd, leaving Doncaster 6 in arrears of Craig Rose. The 110 category remains unpredictable, with riders taking points from one another throughout the opening weekend. The top 5 in particular remain in contention, separated by 13 points, with a 23-point gap behind them. Ashleigh Gorman extended his lead in the 140cc championship with a runner-up position and class victory, and thanks to inconsistency from his rivals. But main rival Taylor Hampshire enjoyed a strong finish to the weekend that brings him back into contention, leaving Doncaster. The fight between Gorman and Masters riders Lee Mitchell and Dale Howard provided the closest action in the first moto, Gorman working his way through from 4th to 2nd and trading places with Howard over a period of 3 laps before finally claiming the race's runner-up position. A lap 2 fall had dropped Gorman's main rival Taylor Hampshire from 6th to 17th, and although he eventually recovered to a creditable 9th, that formed the basis of Gorman's round 2 gains. Hampshire made progress from there, 2 second places in the remaining 2 motos, enough to secure 2 25-point hauls in class and narrow the overall deficit. The third race in particular provided an entertaining spectacle, with Gorman and Hampshire finally pitched into direct conflict. After the pair had traded places on 3 occasions, Hampshire set a new fastest lap of the race on lap 5 and extended his advantage from there. Leon Thomas was the surprise race winner ahead of that battling pair, just under 2 seconds clear after a smooth and consistent race. That result certainly provided some additional spice to the Masters Championship fight between Lee Mitchell and Dale Howard. Howard suffering a lap 2 fall that ruled him out of contention for class victory, and Mitchell further extending his lead. But as Thomas missed the opening round and only 3rd place overall at the 2nd round, he sits a full 81 points back from the championship leader. An improved performance from Luke Humphrey at round 2 leaves him still in touch with leaders Ashleigh Gorman and Taylor Hampshire. Hampshire gives himself hope of challenging from 14 points down by improving throughout the opening 2 rounds. Richard Davies enjoyed a dramatically improved return at round 2, taking 2nd position behind Christopher Rose, but Rose remains unbeaten in class and extends his championship lead to 38 points. Both Rose and Colin Blackwell behind him in the points scored identical totals in round 1 compared to round 2. Following the opening round, the Expert Championship was divided into 3 groups based on performance, with a qualification system in place that enables riders to move up towards the Pro class. The first challenge is to move up from the Expert B category and into Expert A, higher points in the Expert Championship itself being awarded for the races at the highest part of the ladder. With 2 victories in 3 B Group races, Jasper Lee is poised to move up to Expert A alongside Georgie Harling-Townsend and Jake Thomas, who finished directly behind him. Lee enjoyed a day-long battle with Thomas through the 3 motos, Thomas seemingly with the outright pace but a lack of consistency. He did, though, take the 3rd moto to complete a successful weekend. Having only narrowly missed out on a place alongside the pro riders for round 2, Sean Mason was the favourite to top the Expert A riders and fight for a move up to the Expert A Plus group, and he delivered with 3 start-to-finish victories to net 139 points and top the A group rankings. The more interesting battle was for 3rd and 2nd positions, with Sean Clark narrowly seeing off Robert Johnson in the 1st and 2nd motos before a disastrous 3rd dropped him out of the running. Clark's first lap dramas had left him at the back of the pack in his 3rd outing, and although he recovered to 11th, that was enough to rule him out of the crucial top 3 positions. The first of 3 pro motos to decide the honours at the 2nd round of the 2017 season. Remember as well that points scored in every race count towards the championship, which is currently led by Frank Van Homet after the opening 3 motos at round number 1. Van Homet, Kjaergaard and Pocock, the 3 round 1 race winners, sit atop the point standings, but with Blaine Blackwell well and truly in tow after a consistent performance at the opening round, and that means that the top 4 are separated by just 5 points, with Dominic Foreman 6 points further in arrears on 54, 11 points back from the championship leader Van Homet. The top 5 have certainly been fairly evenly matched on the opening round of this 2017 season. Will it be a similar picture at round number 2, which is about to get underway with the first of 3 pro motos
A lot of hesitation on the line as the gate drops and finally the riders are away. Who will make the break? It was a good initial jump from Bradley Pocock, but the whole shot is going to be with the number 71, Blaine Blackwell. Blackwell there first. Frank van Homert immediately into pursuit, looks to the outside line, but coming across the front of him, it's the number 18, Andrew Luke. So Luke and also Bradley Pocock bundling past Frank van Homert, who's relegated down to 4th position, and van Homert possibly running up to the outside line a little bit too soon and found himself blocked past on the inside line by both Pocock and Andrew Luke. Luke has now been relegated down the order and in fact looks set to lose another position here as Sebastian Kergar pulls alongside him in what is now the battle for 4th position, but out in front no such difficulties for Blaine Blackwell, who's got off to a superb start, picked his own racing line while the others were battling past and battling with Frank van Homert, and he's been able to open a little bit of a margin, but that is already starting to recede with Bradley Pocock right in his tail in 2nd position. Pocock, who currently sits 3rd in the standings, just 1 point ahead of Blackwell. Well, Blackwell's set to move above him if he can stay where he is at present. A long way though still to go, and Pocock looking menacing here, cuts to the inside line and comes through for the race lead. So it's Bradley Pocock now in front from Blaine Blackwell in 2nd. Frank van Homert in 3rd place, has been beaten up really on the opening lap, but he's starting to fight back now as briefly looking to the inside there, Blaine Blackwell. The outside line and the pace advantage is with Bradley Pocock. So as we come back round towards the starting positions once again at the end of the opening lap, it's going to be Bradley Pocock who leads the way. 2nd still with Blaine Blackwell, but with a narrowing margin now over Frank van Homert, the current series leader, who sits only down in 3rd position in this opening moto. 4th place behind them as van Homert passes Blaine Blackwell around the outside coming into the first turn. 4th place unchanged, that's still with Kergar, and now Pat Crump further back down the order, passing Andrew Luke for 5th position, so it's all kicking off in the top 5 as Frank van Homert now comes through and into a challenging position on the tail of the current race leader, Bradley Pocock. The lead quartet then breaking clear of the rest of the pack that's led by Pat Crump after getting the better of Andrew Luke, who's now relegated down to 6th position, and that unfolded on the opening turn of this lap number 2, with the current race leader Bradley Pocock ahead of Frank van Homert in 2nd. Blaine Blackwell, after a fast start, has been relegated to 3rd, and he is now starting to come under some pressure from Sebastian Kergar, the rider who's been with them in each of the opening 3 motors of this season at round number 1. Dominic Foreman well down the order at the moment in 9th position, making his way back up through the field after a disastrous start to this moto, but leading the way, no such difficulties for Bradley Pocock as they come out of the back end of the circuit and back towards the completion of this 2nd lap. It's Pocock leading, van Homert in 2nd, Blackwell still in 3rd, and the race starting to develop over 3rd position, and if anything it looks as though Blackwell is being dropped by these top 2, and we're in a similar position to what we've seen in a couple of the motos previously this season, where Pocock and van Homert, the top 2 from 2016, have a pace advantage on the rest of the field, and in the case of this one, it's Sebastian Kergar who seems to be held up slightly behind Blaine Blackwell. Kergar looking wider to try and find a way past the number 71. It's Blackwell who holds the line for the moment. He has been strong in defence of his position in the opening 3 motos of this 2017 season. That's enabled him to maintain consistent point scoring, and he is still very much in the mix for this title as Kergar looks for a move there, had to go for the cutback because again, a good defensive move from Blaine Blackwell to run up to the outside of that berm and just cover off the attack of Sebastian Kergar. Again, it's the outside line for the Dane as he tries to pull alongside the blue helmeted number 71 rider, Blaine Blackwell, and all the while these two are slipping back from the race leaders. Blackwell this time around covering the position, 3rd place ahead of Sebastian Kergar. Again, the Dane launching up to the outside to try and build up his momentum on the tail of Blaine Blackwell. The leaders pulling clear, they're involved in their own separate race here, and if Pocock stays out in front, this is going to move him to within a point of Frank van Homert, who sits in 2nd, and also will enable him to overhaul Sebastian Kergar for 2nd place in the standings, with the Dane only 4th position in this race at the moment. And Blaine Blackwell, if he could have stayed out in front as he led on the opening lap, he would have been set to make up those margins. So you can see just how tight things are at the top of this 2017 championship, with 5 points separating the top 4, and the same top 4 after the end of the opening round in the top 4 positions here, but in a slightly different order, with Sebastian Kergar currently 2nd in the standings, chasing the tail of Blaine Blackwell, who sits 3rd in this race. Blackwell then versus Kergar over 3rd position, while Pocock and Van Homet continue to pull away out in front. Further back, it's Pat Crump in 5th position, Andrew Luke in 6th place, Dominic Foreman recovering up to 7th position ahead of Craig Powell and Daniel Lee, who's been dropping backwards and now goes down to 8th position. But it's Pocock versus Van Homet for the top 2 positions, and then a separate race at the moment. 3rd position with Blaine Blackwell and Sebastian Kergar continuing to close in. Less than a bike length between the two of them now as they come into the twisty infield section, and looking up to the outside line, it's Sebastian Kergar. Still doesn't have that pace advantage to find a way alongside Blaine Blackwell. He certainly was able to close with some speed, but now he's just running at the same pace as Blackwell ahead of him, while the lead 2, who were evenly matched with the pace of this duo on the opening lap, now pulling well clear, and they seem to be finding their own slightly faster rhythm and breaking away. You can see that the leaders have made it onto the back straight, while the other 2 are still negotiating the turn that brings them onto it, and it's Blaine Blackwell ahead of Sebastian Kergar for the moment. We'll see if he's got any answer to try and come through for 3rd position. Kergar is the rider of the top trio that's laboured the most in making his overtakes in the opening 3 races of this season, and the case is similar in this first moto at round number 2. Kergar then versus Blackwell over P3. It's Blackwell at the moment who has it, and Sebastian Kergar in 4th position, just biding his time. He looks up to the outside line now. Blackwell's gone conservative. That's the move from Sebastian Kergar through for 3rd position, and an excellent ride from him. He now has the inside line into the final turn. Cut back manoeuvre from Blaine Blackwell, but he can't get the power down early enough to come back through. And finally, Kergar has been released. Will he now be able to reel in the top 2, who have seemed to run at a similar pace through qualifying and practice sessions to Sebastian Kergar, but the Dane has had to rely on a couple of errors from both Pocock and Van Homet at the opening round to stay in touch with them in terms of the point standings. Blackwell now is showing enough confidence to reach up to the outside line, but he's dropping further back and immediately back from Sebastian Kergar. The fact that he's dropping back so suddenly demonstrates the extent to which he was holding back the number 3 rider Sebastian Kergar, who went up to the outside line to find a way alongside and through. And that gave him then the inside line for that last turn of the lap to come through at the expense of Blaine Blackwell. So a successful ride from Sebastian Kergar to move through into 3rd position, and the lead quintet now. Bradley Pocock out in front in line for the 25 championship points. Frank Van Homet in 2nd place in line for 22. That would close the gap at the top of the standings to just a point. 3rd place is with Sebastian Kergar, who looks set to drop out of the top 2 at the moment. 4th position is with Blaine Blackwell, who's dropped back from the initial race lead, as the leaders now are as close as they've been throughout this race, with Bradley Pocock only narrowly leading Frank Van Homet, who could maintain and even extend his championship lead if he can get the better of Bradley Pocock, who's led since the opening lap. The 2 riders, the 2 leaders coming through to lap the back markers now, and that will give an extra opportunity to Frank Van Homet. If the Dutchman can be faster through lap traffic, then that could just enable him to gain further ground on Bradley Pocock, but visibly that margin has certainly been cut between the lead 2. Bradley Pocock then leading the way over the tallest tabletop on the circuit that brings them back towards the infield once again, and it's Pocock who leads from Van Homet in 2nd position. Blaine Blackwell having dropped back to 4th at the expense of Sebastian Kergar, and our podium trio in this opening moto looks set to be the top 3 in the standings overall, but it is going to change those championship positions, with Bradley Pocock leading them now into the final lap. This is how close Frank Van Homet got to the back of Bradley Pocock last lap around, but he just seemed to catch traffic at the wrong moment, did the Dutchman, and that dropped him a little bit in arrears of Bradley Pocock, who still looks in command of this first moto in the closing stages. And it's Bradley Pocock set to negate some of that disappointment from the opening round after a series of falls that cost him a lot of points at round 1. Round number 2 getting off to the best possible start, with Bradley Pocock still leading. Frank Van Homet still keeping him honest, but it doesn't look as though he's going to be able to get to the race leader, who has dominated this first moto. And if anything, it looks as though Van Homet is starting to drop back as they continue through traffic. And if Bradley Pocock can remain error-free, he will take a 2nd race victory of the season. In fact, become the first rider to win a 2nd moto in 2017. A huge psychological advantage at the start of round number 2 for Bradley Pocock, who has been faultless here, has avoided the falls that cost him points at round number 1. Van Homet swifter through the first back marker of this lap, and that's going to gain him a little bit of ground here on Bradley Pocock, who reaches up to the outside line, coming off the back straight just to ensure another successful pass on another rider down the lower order of the field. And it's Bradley Pocock on towards victory then, set to become the second race winner of the season. He will move to within a point of Frank Van Homet. He will move above Sebastian Kiergaard, who can only manage third, but a good damage limitation ride nonetheless from the day. Bradley Pocock then leading into the final turn. Frank Van Homet's close, but not quite close enough to find a way through. And it's going to be Bradley Pocock who will become the first rider to win 2 motos in 2017. Does he also take a crucial step towards becoming the championship leader? He's now within a point of Frank Van Homet, who finishes second. Third over the line is Sebastian Kiergaard after a crucial mid-race pass on Blaine Blackwell, and what was, as I said, effectively a damage limitation ride to maintain his point scoring up with the top performers in this 2017 campaign. So it's Van Homet who can only manage second position, but he still maintains the championship lead at 1 point at the expense of Bradley Pocock, who takes second. Sebastian Kiergaard now dropping 4 points behind the championship leader Van Homet, and the top 3 are still separated by 4 points, but with both Blaine Blackwell and Dominic Foreman in particular dropping back. Foreman eventually recovering to 5th position, but he's now 17 points in arrears of the championship leader, who remains unchanged. It's Frank Van Homet who still tops the scoring overall. Welcome back to Doncaster for the second of 3 pro motos at round 2 of the 2017 Minibike British Championship. The series currently led by Frank Van Homet, but by just a single point ahead of Bradley Pocock after the Brits' victory in the opening moto, and he tops the overall scoring here this afternoon, with 2 races still remaining, of course, ahead of Frank Van Homet, who finished second, and Sebastian Kiergaard, who took third. The top 4 in that opening race are the top 4 in the current championship standings, now separated by 9 points and led by Frank Van Homet. Building up to this second race of the day then, with Frank Van Homet looking to try and get one over on Bradley Pocock and extend that championship lead. Pocock looking for back-to-back victories to become the new series leader. Underway with a strong start from Frank Van Homet. Alongside him, the number 71, Blaine Blackwell, who took the whole shot in the first moto, but it's Van Homet this time who leads the way, and he moves up Blackwell wide enough to enable Bradley Pocock to come through up the inside as well. So it's Van Homet who leads the way from Pocock in second. A strong start from Andrew Luke, who sits in 4th position in the early stages, although he's now passed by Sebastian Kiergaard for 4th position as the race lead changes hands as well. Bradley Pocock with a perfect block pass on Frank Van Homet to take away the lead. So it's Pocock in front, Van Homet in second. 3rd position is with Blaine Blackwell, 4th is with Sebastian Kiergaard, and we're in exactly the same situation now as we were in the early stages of the first moto, with Sebastian Kiergaard looking to find a way past Blaine Blackwell over 3rd position. And if he's held at bay once again by Blaine Blackwell, that's going to enable Van Homet and Pocock to pull away out in front. It's Pocock with the advantage then. He was dominant in the first moto after hitting the front. If he can do the same in this one, he will become the new championship leader. Bradley Pocock leading the way then, ahead of Frank Van Homet in second. Through come Blaine Blackwell and Sebastian Kiergaard, right close to one another, packed in tightly in the battle for 3rd position. Andrew Luke still 5th, ahead of Craig Powell in 6th position. But no change in those leading positions, and we're in a similar situation to where we were in the first moto. Reaching up to the outside line, it's Sebastian Kiergaard. That's where he made the pass in the first moto against Blaine Blackwell. It's certainly that outside line that's enabled to get him to gain in ground here. And 3rd and 4th positions are almost nose to tail as they come off that bend, and down to the inside comes Sebastian Kiergaard. Blackwell looks alongside himself, realises that Sebastian Kiergaard is through, and having made the break much sooner this time, will the number 3 now be able to go off in pursuit of the top 2, or will he be stuck in 3rd position as he was first time out? no doubt about it. Sebastian Kergar not getting off the line well is costing him points in 2017, and you need near perfection to run up with the top performers Frank van Homert and Bradley Pocock, so dropping positions at the start is certainly far from ideal for any rider who wants to live with the pace of either Bradley Pocock or Frank van Homert. It's Pocock who leads for the moment, just as he would have hoped. If he can hold on here, it will be back-to-back victories that will take him to the top of the championship standings. Meanwhile, if Frank van Homert can find a way past Bradley Pocock, it'll be all to play for in the third race of the day to decide positions here this afternoon. Separate battle further down the order for 10th position between the 369 of Daniel Lee and the 168 bike ridden by Luke Burton, as we return to the leaders, and Bradley Pocock with that advantage over Frank van Homert, with a deficit behind the Dutchman that's ever growing to Sebastian Kergar, who looks to have third position settled down but doesn't seem to have the pace to live with the top two once again. So Bradley Pocock leads over the finish line to complete another lap. Battles further down the order, this between Kevin Nielsen and Craig Powell over 7th position. Powell having held that place at the end of the opening lap, but he's now under severe pressure from Kevin Nielsen, who sat 8th at that stage. Both riders gained from fall from Andrew Luke, who dropped right back through the field, and both have also lost a position to Dave Lamb recovering. So plenty going on in the lower reaches of the top 10, but up front it's all about the battle between Bradley Pocock and Frank van Homert. As we look further down the order, here is Andrew Luke, almost a lap behind the leaders now, trying to make his way through riders in the lower order of the field, and Andrew Luke, who sits inside the top 10 in the championship. Well, this is all about damage limitation exercise for him. As I said, you can see the sheer train of riders that he's got to make his way back through. Well, the leader's half a lap ahead of him, Bradley Pocock ahead of Frank van Homert. Just got it slightly wrong there over the far corner of the circuit, and that's going to give Bradley Pocock an enhanced lead and may also put some pressure now on Frank van Homert from Sebastian Kergar behind. The Dane hasn't really been able to match the top two in terms of outright pace. But again, as we saw at the opening round of the season, any slight errors from either of these two, and Kergar is there and ready to pounce. The Dane now right on the tail of Frank van Homert as they come over that finish straight, and van Homert losing a lot of ground on that last lap around, and Sebastian Kergar trying to bring himself back into the mix for a top two finish here. Kergar, who for outright speed hasn't been able to beat either van Homert or Pocock, but van Homert suffered a fall at the opening round, and Bradley Pocock suffered a series of falls at the opening round that restricted his scoring. Kergar therefore right up with them in terms of the championship hunt. 4 points separating these three riders who sit in the top three positions in this second moto, with Bradley Pocock leading, but Frank van Homert closing back in once again, looking to the inside. Pocock covers it off. Not really an overtaking manoeuvre on there, but Bradley Pocock will realise that Frank van Homert is right up alongside him. Van Homert goes for the outside line, then comes back, and van Homert makes the pass on Bradley Pocock. Well, where did that come from? Because less than a lap ago it looked as though van Homert had dropped right back from Bradley Pocock, but he's worked hard, he's reeled back in lost ground, and now it's Bradley Pocock who's on the offensive. And Frank van Homert, the championship leader, set to extend that leading margin as Pocock cuts to the inside line to see if he can do something about that. Unless he can get back into top spot, it will be Frank van Homert who extends that championship lead. Pocock looking to the inside, van Homert loses his footing, Pocock recaptures the position. Brilliant racing between these two, the top two in the championship last year, the top two in the championship in 2017 after the opening moto here at round two. And Bradley Pocock holding the lead position, but a perfect cutback from Frank van Homert to take the lead. Pocock then responding well as he went on the attack, and I suppose that Pocock may feel he lost that position by being a little bit too defensive in the battle against Frank van Homert. He's recaptured it by hard work and a little bit of aggressive manoeuvring on the tail of van Homert, although just as I say that, van Homert has fought his way back through. Pocock back up to the outside line. A seesaw battle for the lead as Pocock goes up to the outside and has the momentum but can't carry it past Frank van Homert, and it's the Dutchman back in the lead position, and Bradley Pocock will have to risk more and more to try and get back in front of Frank van Homert as the pair run side by side, and elbows out by Bradley Pocock to come through. and then hold the inside line here as Bradley Pocock leads once again. Well, these two have swapped places on at least half a dozen occasions now during this second moto here at round 2 in Doncaster. They alone are providing a huge chunk of entertainment as Pocock and Van Homet both run up to the outside line towards the back end of the circuit to try and negotiate lap traffic and move towards the highest point on the circuit. That's where a lot of overtaking manoeuvres have been made further down the field, but up front they seem to have perfected it. Is Bradley Pocock a little bit wayward as he comes through, and Frank Van Homet in second position, ready to capitalise, looking to try and pounce, going up to the outside once again to build up his momentum. Of course, the advantage is with the rider in second position to be able to pick the outright fastest line, whereas the rider up front has to think about trying to defend the place from the rider behind them, and so we have seen plenty of overtaking here between Pocock and Van Homet, who seem to be faster than one another on different points on the track, as Pocock just nips past the back marker under blue flags there, releasing Pocock to extend his advantage a little there, back past the start-finish straight once again. And at the moment it's Bradley Pocock who looks set to become the championship leader for the first time in 2017, but not if Frank Van Homet can have his say on the matter as he continues to remain in touch. No change in third and fourth positions. It's Sebastian Kiergaard in line for a podium once again ahead of Blackwell, who dropped back from a second place running in the early part of the race. Van Homet again looking to the outside. Bradley Pocock still the leader, but by less than a half a dozen bike lengths as they come up against more back markers. Again, Pocock's gone for his favoured inside line. Van Homet's ended up getting hung up to dry there on the outside and had to cut back as they thread their way through the traffic. This gives Van Homet another opportunity to get onto the tail of Bradley Pocock. Is it one he can take advantage of though, because in the first moto, the moment they hit back markers, it was Van Homet who was slower through and Pocock unable to extend his advantage. That's not the case here seemingly, with Bradley Pocock leading the way and Bradley Pocock's run wide. Pocock runs wide and off the circuit, and that's given it away to Frank Van Homet, and the trend of 2017 continues that Bradley Pocock has the outright pace, but he's error-strewn performances, and in this one that's given the lead to Frank Van Homet. The Dutchman up front then. Can Bradley Pocock go on the offensive again and gain in lost ground? Time, of course, running out in the latter stages of this race. We're coming, by my reckoning, to the last lap, and it's Frank Van Homet who leads the way into the final lap, ahead of Bradley Pocock in second. Sebastian Kiergaard still in third, but he's dropped well back. Blackwell in fourth position, and up in fifth place it's Pat Crump ahead of that battle between Dave Lamb, Kevin Nielsen and Craig Powell, who round out the top 8. Frank Van Homet on his way towards victory. We're in that situation where Bradley Pocock seems to have the outright pace, but too many mistakes have cost him so far this season, and he needs to find a way of earning some consistency, because this is going to put Frank Van Homet back into a joint lead of this round number 2, and also restore his championship lead back up to 4 points it will be as things stand, as Van Homet leads Bradley Pocock around this twisty infield section with the advantage, and he just needs to keep it calm now, because Van Homet has enough in his pocket to take the checkered flag. Barring any errors, Bradley Pocock will try and chase after his back wheel to try and force an error, but it doesn't look as though there's going to be one, and Van Homet has made such a success in recent seasons of being the most consistent rider in the paddock, and that's what he's trying to do again this season, with Bradley Pocock certainly coming strong out of the blocks this year, but not able to find that consistency and not able to avoid the errors that have cost him so far in what's going to be the first 5 races of the season. This the 5th moto of 2017, the second of round 2 here in Doncaster, and it's going to be Frank Van Homet home for his second victory of the season. He will become the joint leader at round number 2, and he will reassert his dominance on the championship points tallies overall. Frank Van Homet takes the checkered flag. Second home is Bradley Pocock. Eventually third will be Sebastian Kiergaard, and then a big gap behind this trio to the rest of the field coming through, with Blackwell set to take 4th position, and there he comes over the line for P4. 5th place will be Pat Crump, and the rest of the runners not on the pace of the front runners. Once again, it's the top 3 who've been able to break clear, and it's the same top 3 who sit in the top 3 positions in the championship standings, and in fact sit in the top 3 positions in the round 2 standings as well. Victory for Frank Van Homet then puts him on to 47 race points and tied alongside Bradley Pocock with 1 victory apiece at round number 2. The third moto will be the decider. Sebastian Kjærgaard 7 points in arrears overall here today, but that also means that he now drops 9 points in arrears in the championship hunt, with Frank Van Homet leading the way by 4 points over Bradley Pocock. Final and deciding moto at round 2 of the 2017 Minibike British Championship. On paper, this looks like a straightforward fight between Frank Van Homet and Bradley Pocock, who sit on 47 points apiece. Sebastian Kjærgaard also in touch on 40. Those look set to be the podium trio, but who will leave the championship leaving Doncaster? As we get underway with the third moto, it's a fast start from Frank Van Homet. Pocock was also away well, but he stuck to the inside line and he's been swallowed up, dropping down to 4th place with Blaine Blackwell coming through. Sebastian Kjærgaard up in 3rd position, but only briefly as Pocock now comes through and back inside the podium positions. It's Van Homet leading the way. 2nd place on the inside there on the last turn, Blaine Blackwell. Trying to gain ground on him here, it's Bradley Pocock who sits in 3rd position, having dispatched Sebastian Kjærgaard. That wasn't a bad jump from Bradley Pocock, but he was a little conservative on the inside of the first turn, and around him came both Blackwell and Kjærgaard. So Bradley Pocock trying to recover 2nd position as he loses his footing slightly there. He sits 2nd to Frank Van Homet, 3rd with Blaine Blackwell, 4th Sebastian Kjærgaard. Dominic Foreman, good to see him back up in the top 10. He sits 5th. Andrew Luke, Craig Powell, Kevin Nielsen, Dave Lamb and Daniel Lee at the moment rounding out the top 7, but it looks as though Lamb is on the march as we join on board with Blaine Blackwell just being overhauled by Bradley Pocock. So Pocock quickly back up into 2nd place, but Frank Van Homet has been enabled to scamper away while those two have fought it out over 2nd position. Van Homet then leading, Pocock in 2nd place. Blaine Blackwell once again a fast start, but dropping back through the order. He's found it tough to hold on to position. He's fighting back for 2nd place on the inside there of Bradley Pocock, so perhaps this fight isn't over just yet. Frank Van Homet though pulling away out in front. It's been a super break from him, and Bradley Pocock will have to work very hard if he wants to be the overall winner here at round 2. The round 1 winner, Frank Van Homet, leads the way. It's Bradley Pocock, the winner of the first moto here today, who sits in 2nd position, having been beaten by Frank Van Homet last time out. He looks set for the same result in this one. The fight at the moment is over 3rd, with the number 71 going backwards once again. It's Blaine Blackwell on the inside trying to defend against Sebastian Kjærgaard, who has been working hard for his places in the top 3. 2 third place finishes on each occasion, having to overhaul Blaine Blackwell. He made swift work of it 2nd time out after labouring to take 3rd position in the opening motor. Slightly different line there from Sebastian Kjærgaard, but that's covered off quite capably by Blaine Blackwell, who sits in 3rd position at the moment. The front 4 haven't broken away from the rest of the pack quite so dramatically as they did last time out. Of course, this time around, Dominic Foreman up there and in contention. He sits in 5th place. The results of this round 2 haven't gone in his favour so far. He was one of the top performers at the opening round of the season, but has dropped back in the point standings at round number 2. Doncaster treating Frank Van Homet very well indeed. He is on his way to another victory, which would be his 3rd in the 2017 season, his 2nd taken here this afternoon. It's Frank Van Homet who leads Bradley Pocock, who sits in 2nd place. Battles further down the order and right the way to the fringes of the top 10. Just coming over in the red livery there, Craig Powell on the number 12 bike. He sits up in 7th position, but under pressure from Kevin Nielsen. As under pressure is the number 71 Blaine Blackwell, who's overtaken now. Sebastian Kjærgaard coming through. They're under yellow flags, so there's nothing Blaine Blackwell can do to try to repay the compliment, and he has to settle in 4th position. So Sebastian Kjærgaard once again released on in neither of the 2 motos so far. Has he been able to gain in any ground on the leaders Frank Van Homet or Bradley Pocock after fighting his way past Blaine Blackwell? Will this race buck the trend as we see the fight further down once again, trying to come through the number 871 of Dave Lamb, who has now made that pass So Dave Lamb getting the better of Craig Powell to come through as we have a fall for Blaine Blackwell. That's disastrous for him from 4th position. He has been a solid performer in each of his appearances so far this season. It's consistency that's enabled him to stay with the top performers in the championship overall, but he looks set to drop right back through the field. That really is a dramatic turn of events for Blaine Blackwell, who was sat once again in 4th position, looking set to make it a trio of 4th place finishes, and he's gone down from that 4th place, and now it's just a question of how far he can recover back through the field. I make it around about the 15th position mark there for Blaine Blackwell after that dramatic fall. So gaining out of that are various riders, including Pat Crump, who had a slow start to the race but has made his way back through the field. He's got the better already of Dave Lamb, and Lamb's lost another 2 positions there. Looks as though he's stalled it coming round the back end of the circuit. So Dave Lamb, who'd had a solid start to this race, he is dropping to the fringes of the top 10, but at least for him, he's ahead of Blaine Blackwell, who has had a disastrous start to the race, what with losing 2nd place early on, then dropping to 4th place, and now dropping out of the top 10 altogether. Returning to this fight between Craig Powell and Kevin Nielsen, but now it's worth a much better potential finishing position after all sorts of problems for Dave Lamb, and of course Pat Crump on the invert on the flip side, making his way through the field as Nielsen looks to the inside on Craig Powell but can't find a way past. Powell defending that position well for the moment, having sat up in 7th at the end of the opening lap. He finds himself in 7th position once again following that dramatic moment for Dave Lamb. He's just lost it coming out of that final turn. The bike doesn't want to go how he wants it to, and either side of him they go. Craig Powell on the inside, Kevin Nielsen on the outside, and after that misfortune for Dave Lamb at the bottom end of the circuit, those two resume their rivalry and battle for 7th position. The order among the top-ranked riders remains unchanged. Frank Van Homert out in front ahead of Bradley Pocock in 2nd and Sebastian Kiergaard in 3rd, which as it stands will also be the finishing order at round 2 of this 2017 season, as well as the current championship order leaving Doncaster. Further back through the field, Dave Lamb has made an astonishing recovery back up to 7th position ahead of Craig Powell and Kevin Nielsen, and their ongoing fight that has been protracted throughout the race is now over 8th position again, with Craig Powell at the moment holding it ahead of Kevin Nielsen, who at the moment is on the attack, looking to the inside as Craig Powell looks over his shoulder and retains the position. So it's for now 7th position with Dave Lamb, 8th with Craig Powell, and 9th position with Kevin Nielsen. Rounding out the top 10, James Cook and Benjamin Weller, and they are involved in their own fight actually over that 10th place. But separating himself out a little bit now, Craig Powell ahead of Kevin Nielsen, who's trying to settle down that 8th place battle. The man who's certainly settled down the lead battle is the number 1, Frank Van Homert. Just a couple of laps still remaining for the reigning champion, and he looks set to open back out that championship margin, and by 3 points more than it was coming into this round 2, as we join the fight for 10th position between Benjamin Weller and James Cook. Cook being held at bay for the moment. Benjamin Weller having made a good move up through the field, sitting in 13th position at the end of the opening lap, and as I said, now in 10th place with Cook tucked in right behind him and trying to find a way back through, having sat ahead of Weller earlier in the race. So that's the fight for 10th place. We've seen the battle for 8th position as well, but in terms of the race lead, this is the first race where we haven't really been able to say that there's been too much frantic action involving the top 5 riders. Frank Van Homert and Bradley Pocock, neither of them have put a foot wrong in this race, and it's Frank Van Homert that for the first time this season has really demonstrated some of his best form as he leads out in front and by a sizable margin over Bradley Pocock, who's dropped back in 2nd place. Returning to this fight between Craig Powell and Kevin Nielsen. Nielsen looking up the inside as they go through the section, actually pulls past Powell. Powell will now try to go around the outside onto the start straight and back across into turn number 1, and he's pulled off that move successfully. These two have been swapping and changing positions throughout the race, and it's Craig Powell who returns himself to 8th position ahead of Kevin Nielsen in 9th, and then that fight over 10th position between Weller and Cook. Frank Van Homert is now heading towards the final lap, and with that comfortable advantage intact, over Bradley Pocock in second. Sebastian Kjærgaard, as he's found all weekend long, has not been able to live up to the pace of Frank van Homert or Bradley Pocock. And this is going to put him 14 points in arrears of Frank van Homert, who will lead the championship, leaving Doncaster as the double winner. He certainly won round one. He was a little bit fortunate with incidents for Bradley Pocock, and after suffering his own misfortune in the third moto of the opening round, well, in this third moto of round number 2, he's going to confirm a second victory out of 2. Second overall win, of course, with the 3 motos combined at round 2 of the season. This will bring Frank van Homert onto 72 points at this round, with Bradley Pocock trailing by 3. And since Pocock won that opening moto, van Homert has really stepped on the gas. He was a little bit fortunate with Bradley Pocock's off-track exploits in the second moto, but you certainly couldn't argue that in this one. This has been a supremely dominant performance from Frank van Homert, who is going to take a third race victory out of 6 in 2017, and as I said previously, a second race victory overall in the opening 2 rounds of this campaign, and already setting himself up nicely for the remaining rounds of the season. He will go into Worcester with a 7-point advantage over Bradley Pocock. There is still plenty of mileage left in this 2017 campaign, but a huge psychological advantage taken early in this season by Frank van Homert, the reigning champion, just looking over his shoulder there to check on the progress of Bradley Pocock, and he's not within striking distance. Van Homert has been able to ease off the pace on this final lap, and he already celebrates before he gets to the checkered flag. It's Frank van Homert who wins on both round 1 and round 2 of the 2017 season by 3 points in the second event, and that further extends his championship leading margin, with Bradley Pocock coming over the line in second. A long wait for Sebastian Kjærgaard to come through in third, and the rest of the pack some way adrift of him as well. And it's Van Homert then who will top the score charts here today with 72 points. Bradley Pocock, who will finish on 69. Sebastian Kjærgaard in third in each of the 3 motos and overall on 60. It was only Van Homert and Pocock in the top 3 positions that traded places through the 3 motos. Congratulations between the riders. Good to see a real sporting atmosphere at the end of this second round of the 2017 campaign. Won by Frank van Homert by 3 points over Bradley Pocock. Sebastian Kjærgaard consistent but unable to trouble the top 2. Meanwhile, further down the order, Pat Crump maintains that position tucked in right behind those 3. So in the context of the championship overall, it's Frank van Homert who leaves Doncaster with a 7-point advantage over Bradley Pocock, who moves up to second at the second round of the season at the expense of Sebastian Kjærgaard, consistent but dropping back. And trouble for both Dominic Foreman and Blaine Blackwell. Blackwell, particularly in the third moto. Foreman in the first 2 races of the day has dropped them back from the leading 3, who are now set to dominate in 2017 and will certainly lead going out of Doncaster and heading to Worcester for rounds 3 and 4 of the 2017 Minibike British Championship.